Hey,
Hey, good morning. Sorry, I had to click yes to one setting on Zoom. That's why I was off and then back on.
that's all right. Like, what's wrong with my Zoom? I have lots of Zoom issues. I don't use it very often anymore.
Yeah, me either. Um,
On Teams.
yeah, this is really the only thing I use it for, but um,
Well, hopefully we'll have a quorum.
hopefully, just looking for one thing here. I was told that if I turned on closed captioning, it would make our minutes writing process a little easier. So I'm
Oh,
gonna try that.
okay.
Tammy said she was in a meeting that they did that and it worked out.
Interesting.
Um, how was your trip?
It was good. It was very good.
Yeah, good to be
Just,
back or no?
I'm finally recovered from jet lag like 2 days ago. It took a long time this time to get over it. I don't know what the deal was.
Well, you were fully there, right? It's hard to,
3 weeks.
yeah,
I did great over, so I don't know. It's all good and come back to the nasty council meeting.
yeah. Was it bad this week or yesterday?
Just watch the first 15 minutes of public comment if you ever want to know.
Got
It's
it. I'm gonna
nasty.
put it on my list.
Yeah,
Um, interesting.
yeah,
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I hope we have a quorum because I'm piling up
right.
um
Hey,
stuff.
Waddy.
Good morning.
Morning.
There's Pedro. Good morning, Pedro. Or he's still connecting.
Yeah, I just need three more.
Good morning, Pedro.
Hi, good morning, Jessica. Try to-
Give it a couple minutes here.
Yeah.
Your kids going back to school, Pedro?
Yeah, they started last week.
I
A
don't know if
bit
that.
too soon, in my opinion, but it's still hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm currently on my way actually driving to school, just so
Oh,
everybody knows.
yeah. I guess it's that time of year again.
Yeah.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Let's see. One, two. I have a quorum, Chair.
All right.
I
Let's
have a
get
good.
going while we have it then, just in case. So we will go ahead and open up the August 23rd, 2023 Smart Commute Board meeting and welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and move into approval of the May and July minutes. Anybody have any questions? If not, let's get a motion on the table.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Good morning, Nathan.
Good morning, friends.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed say no. All right, we'll go ahead and accept the May and July minutes and move into the treasurer's report.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for everybody for being here today. This is pretty good attendance for us, so I'm happy about that. I don't know if we'll take up the full hour today, but if we have a healthy discussion, I'm sure we will. I tried to leave a little bit of room this time for that. So, um, I have a few treasurer's reports on the screen. I'll show you June, July, and August. I spent some time in the last meeting discussing important points from June and July, although we did not approve them. I will point out the important points here, but not take a lot of time on those two, and then talk a little bit about August more in depth, since it's really the one we're focusing on this time. If you have questions about these previous 2 months, you can go back and watch the recording of last month, or you can ping me and we can talk about it offline. So realistically, the June treasurer's report was pretty straightforward. We received a lot of deposits back in June, like our Adams County CMAQ local match that we receive every year. We received some membership funding, some e-bike payments from RTD so that we could go purchase our phase 2 e-bikes. The salaries were normal. Most things were pretty straightforward. The only odd debits for the month was the e-bike assessments and equipment. That was about $1,400. Again, that's fully paid by RTD based on their contracting. So we had a healthy balance back then of $63,000 in our checking account and a little bit lower in our savings account. Moving to July, we again had a relatively healthy month, but it was not normal. Our 3 things that I want to point out here, I guess 4 technically line items. One is this RTD 144th LAC. That's local agency contribution, basically local match on grants transfer. So we use our savings account as a holding account for transfer funds for our local match on the 144th Flex Ride and e-bike program. It's time to come up and make those payments. Payments are coming due for that to RTD. So I had to transfer $88,000 from our savings account into our checking account to write a series of 3 checks, which you'll see down here below, of about $28,000, $26,000, and $29,000 respectively. That puts us good in terms of local match through 2022, the end of 2022, and we will just have to pay up through September of 2023 for our local match remaining on the table for that program. So this was a big odd month, one that we've been waiting for a long time in terms of transferring money out of a savings account and making that payment happen. But all within plans, and nothing was out of the ordinary. We were prepared for that. Again, a healthy ending balance of about $50,000 that month. I'll pause there for half a second. Any questions for those that weren't here to see this previously?
Any questions, comments, concerns? Not seeing any.
It was 3 scary checks to write, but we were ready and we've been preparing for a long time, and Sharon had prepared for a long time before me. So it's nice to see that come to fruition in a way. Here is our August treasurer's report. We had an opening balance of, again, around $50,000 back in July, so we do it the month before. We didn't have any deposits this month. It just happened that we were a little late on a few CDOT payments, a few RTD payments. We just didn't have any deposits come in for whatever reason in July, not really in our control, as we're up to date on all of our invoicing processes. Our debits were relatively normal, although a little bit high. Salaries hang around that $15,000 to $17,000 number, depending on how much our part-time employee, Catherine, is able to work month to month. She was able to work a little bit more that month. IRS withholdings, we pay for MailChimp. We had a little bit higher mileage phone reimbursement during this treasurer's report period, because we do that quarterly for some of our employees and some of them we do them monthly. So that's why you'll see some discrepancies in terms of mileage and phone reimbursement month to month. We had to pay our quarterly Colorado state tax. We had to pay for some NADA coffee and food, which was about $100 for a few months worth. We had to pay for our quarterly web support. Insurance comes around quarterly for our nonprofit specialty insurance. We had to pay our accountant to do some quarterly tax filings, about $19 to file one form for us there. And then this $12,463 that we spent back during this period was to pay for our phase 2 e-bikes. This is 10 e-bikes that we paid for with the trainings, with the accessories to get them out on the road with our participants, and they're out on the road now. You'll see that reflected in the previous month's pay balance. So we were actually paid up front by RTD this $12,000, and we're able to turn that around and go pay. So we like it when we get paid up front. It makes it a lot easier on the cash flow situation for us. So we had an ending balance that was a little low, $12,559.24. Don't like to see it below $20,000 typically, but again, we just didn't have any deposits that month, putting us in a bit of a harder spot. As of this morning, our checking balance is $25,529, which is right within that healthy range, right above $20,000 for us. And then our current savings balance is still that $36,415 that's being set aside continually for the remaining FlexRide and e-bike payments. Our current outstanding invoices, which I did not talk about in the previous two treasurer's reports because, well, they were outstanding at the time, they're not outstanding anymore. This is up to date, these last few line items. We have about $43,000 worth of outstanding invoices right now. Some of it is 144th FlexRide local match, which I can talk about in a little while, but that's from some of the local groups like Denver Premium Outlets and others that are going to work with us to get local match payments done, but they just have kind of complex processes to get the invoicing process done. So working hard on that to get those in so that we can turn that money around to RTD expeditiously. And then, like I said before, CDOT is behind and is slow on payments right now. They're out our normal CMAQ payment May, June, and July now. That's quite a bit of money left on the table for us right now, and I don't know what the problem is. I've bothered them a few times, and if it gets another month in there, I'll have to have a sit-down conversation with somebody about why that's taking so long. We still have some normal memberships out. Some of them just roll throughout the year, and I need to start invoicing those people that happened kind of more mid-year rather than the beginning of the year. We still have some RTD payments out there, and Adams County's CMAQ local match of roughly $29,000 has been invoiced and is sitting out there. So any questions, comments, concerns about this treasurer's report, and then I'll look for a motion for a package of all three.
Questions or comments? So Carson, every year, does this sort of look the same with the outstanding?
It does. It just depends on when it happens. It feels like to me. I think Karen struggled with this for a long time, and I have too. Once CDOT gets bogged down in their offices for some odd reason, it seems like at one point every year we get about 3 invoices behind, and it gets uncomfortably close, and then they turn it around and pay them all. I don't know why that's the case, other than anecdotal stories about staffing problems in their business office.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, if there aren't any questions, we can go ahead and get a motion on the table to accept what is this, July and August treasurer's report?
I had June, July, and August actually.
Okay.
So move.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed say no. All right, we'll go ahead and accept the June, July, and August treasurer's report. And the next item is the trip reduction update.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to get into the meat of the agenda here. And like I said, I don't think we'll take up the full time, but I did want to give you an update on something that kind of came to the top these last couple of weeks that I think would be interesting for the group as it pertains to smart commute strategy and beyond. The Transportation Legislation Review Committee, TLRC, the joint committee down at the Capitol, requested that the Way to Go group, partnership group that we are obviously a part of, come and give a presentation to the group about ETRP, or Trip Reduction, Employer Trip Reduction Program. There's a lot of different names for it. CTR is what Washington State calls it, just Commute Trip Reduction Plan. Essentially, it's the mandate that was coming to the top A couple of years ago, it started and failed at the end, where we get large employers to reduce the number of trips that their employees are taking to or from work. And it typically comes in the form of surveying employees and then implementing some kind of a commute trip reduction plan, which would be on our shoulders to kind of help implement, so that employers could prove that, they're trying to get people out of their cars. So there are rumblings that this might come back at the state level. We don't know if it would be more of a carrot or a stick, right? Either a non-mandate or a mandate. We've been doing the non-mandate for a long time in this region. There might need to be some kind of more formality attached to it, either funding wise in terms of carrot or mandate wise in terms of a stick. So we went down to the Capitol on Monday, and Way to Go's team, Dr. Cog, presented. We presented about why ETRP efforts and the mandate failed last time with concerns from the business community that were either founded or unfounded. And then Washington State was asked to come in and present their own experience with their own program, just like this, the CTR. They have a mandate across what amounts to basically the Seattle and Redmond region, where people have to comply, and employers that are over 100 people or more get out of their cars at some rate. So it's an interesting conversation, and I don't know exactly where it's going to land, but there's conversations down at the Capitol happening. And if another mandate, either carrot or stick, came up, Smart Commute would have a heavy role in implementing this, and we would advocate pretty heavily for the need for additional funding and additional staff to be able to carry something like this out within our respective regions of each TMA. I just wanted to bring it to your attention if there's any thoughts, discussions, topics. Pedro, I see your hand. Sure.
Yeah, I just want to ask if Smart Commute worked with any members or other organizations may have reached to help with setting up a program like the ETRP. I mean, I know we did a commuting survey a couple years ago with Smart Commute, but I don't know if there was any other entities that you have or that have reached to Smart Commute, or that you have worked to try to set up a program.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'll start here. We have an annual commuter survey that's a little bit half a step back from an actual CTR program, but it all feeds into the same purpose. And we have roughly 2,000 responses to that survey across a number of employers. About 8 to 10 employers take that every year. And then we try to implement what would look like a CTR in the form of recommended strategies to get people out of their car. So a good example is Adams 12 School District. Their main campus is right next to the 124th inline station. They do the survey every year. They had a number of responses, and then we would go and meet with their leadership and say, hey, if you would be interested in supporting EcoPass or a number of passes, that would be a good way to get people out of their cars. That's a soft way to do a program like this, and we've been doing it for a number of years now. If it was mandated, that would be a totally different ball game for us and what that might look like for our staff. So I hope that helps.
So right now it's only voluntary. It's not mandatory, right?
That's correct. It's been voluntary. I mean, this is the work we've been doing for a long time, right? Trying to get people connected with resources to get out of their cars. It's just there may be some kind of a formalized either mandate or funding in terms of a carrot to help people do this work. So we have to plug into that strategy at the state capitol level whenever it comes down the pike.
So were there other TMOs at the TLRC that you attended? I think
there were 6 in total. There's 8 in the region. So 6 executive directors were in the room. One presented Mike Hughes of West Corridor TMA. He has some good political experience and was able to present some, what I would call color, added some color to the story behind why employers fought back so vehemently against the initial ETRP effort around the state.
Is it the first time that you, because I usually have, I'm asked to go to a TLRC every year, but different functions within transportation business. So I think this is important to actually get the legislators, get in front of the legislators.
Yeah, it was my first time going in this capacity, and it was the first time, as I understand it, that they asked our partnership at the regional level to come and present. So it was a big deal. We worked a long time in the background, all the executive directors and different TMAs, to make sure that the message was cohesive and struck the right chord. Tried, at least.
Well, I'm sure it'll be an interesting year legislatively again.
Yep. They were talking about RTD legislation as well, with changing some funding and structure of the board. So I'm sure you may have seen that CPR article that came out. We'll see how that shakes out with Senator Winter.
Yep. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Carson.
Sure. Keep an eye on it. It could change our work
Yeah.
a lot. I guess I'll just close by saying one thing. I think ETRP, it could be a good thing for us, but we have to be realistic with the options that are out there for commuters in our region. And we have to be realistic with the understanding that not everybody can take an alternative mode in our region. So the threshold has to look different for downtown employers versus suburban employers. So we're keenly aware of that, and all the TMOs are aware of that too. So from a strategic standpoint, we're in the background pushing that message pretty heavily while they write whatever legislation they're going to come up with.
And it's not really just businesses that are downtown, it's anyone who lives outside of downtown.
Yep.
Even if business is downtown, getting there is still a challenge, and there isn't a reliable way to get there. I've watched all week again, N-Line canceled, delayed, and everything else. So it's, again, if you don't live in Denver or Boulder and you don't have to travel to those places from anywhere else, then yeah, it's a great thing. But if you do, forget it.
Yeah, the threshold becomes quite different quite quickly for something that could be successful.
And the train from Fort Collins to Trinidad isn't going to help. So I'm sorry, I have to throw that dig in there because it really irritates me that that's where we're instead of these other things.
If anybody on the call wants to come to NADA tomorrow, Front Range Passenger Rail Special District will be there to do one of their first initial outreaches to the Adams County and beyond NADA region. So that'll be interesting.
I've got my ticket.
Yeah, you better be there. It's gonna be, it'll be spicy, I'm sure.
Yep. All
All
right.
right, I'm gonna keep us moving if that's okay. So I have had this on the agenda for the last few months, but I'm happy to announce we're almost to the end of these grant application status update phases, and we'll start moving into actual projects for hopefully all of these. Three main categories: TDM set aside a DRCOG opportunity, TMO support grant, which is an opportunity through CDOT, and then RTD's partnership grant program, which is a competitive thing across the entire RTD district. So our TDM set aside grant update through the DRCOG process was approved last Wednesday night at the board meeting. Unanimously, the whole TDM set aside slate of projects was approved. So we're happy to announce that we'll be moving forward with roughly a $250,000 program that's titled Using Data-Driven Approach to Optimizing FlexRide Services. What that means is we'll be essentially paying for software through Esri, the people that make GIS software, a new piece of technology that will allow us to look at FlexRide origin destination data, employment data across the entire North area, 5, maybe 6 FlexRides, depending on who wants to come to the table and support this, so that we can make sure that those kind of polygons that make up FlexRide service areas are optimized in a way that improves riderships and makes them viable for not only employment, but also personal use for things like doctor's appointments, grocery store visits, whatever it might be. And RTD is at the table with us lockstep to make sure this meets what their service planners want as well. So really excited about this opportunity, and it'll be an opportunity for Gene on our team, who's worked on the 144th FlexRide, to stay on and kind of continue this work on optimizing FlexRides at a larger scale across the entire Smart Commute service area. So happy about this.
Questions about this one? All right, let's keep going.
That was a 2-year grant process, by the way. This next one is a CDOT TMO support grant. This is a non-competitive pot of money that they've given out to each of the TMOs across the state. Actually, they have some TMOs out in Glenwood Springs. Where else did they start one? They're thinking about starting one up north in Fort Collins. Anyway, there's a number of TMOs that are not in the metro region that CDOT helps fund. So they're also joining in on this non-competitive grant opportunity. It's $125,000 this year, which is a lot more than we were expecting. Previous year, it was only $60,000. So they've more than doubled that pot of money for us. It's a year-long grant process, and it's been approved. The scope has been approved by their staff for us to execute on 3 different projects. So the first is the start to a multimodal community resource maps idea. We'll be using that same software that we'll be purchasing through the TDM set-aside program in order to create little customizable digital, then printable multimodal maps focused on smaller geographic areas. So think Amazon facility, we could come out with a customized multimodal map to help them put in a welcome packet for all their employees to get them out of their cars early on in the process. This is exciting for us. We do this on a one-off basis and have for a long time, but it can formalize this process and can become something we can do at a much larger scale for a lot of employers across the region with this funding. The second is the North Metro Bike Map Phase 2. So we did phase 1, where we kind of did a bunch of GIS analysis, sat down with all the 13 jurisdictions across the area to talk about what the gaps were. Now we're going to take that data and kind of mull it around, re-meet with people, and then eventually spit out what will be a graphic North area bike map, first digital, then printable. We got to decide. That'll be a long process, deciding what it looks like and what's included and what's not included, and how regional the scale is so that it's actually usable for people on bikes. And then e-mobility hubs, it'll be at the start of a e-mobility hub process where we're interested in focusing on shared bike concept with a maintenance trainee program for kind of low income at-risk youth in the area. This is something we went after with this Colorado Energy Office grant with the city of North Glen, but were not approved. So we were able to kind of recycle that grant application and put it in here. The way that we see this working is a series of e-mobility hubs essentially across the region, right? Maybe one at Denver Premium Outlets, maybe one at the Orchard Town Center, maybe one at, Margaret Carpenter, maybe one at North Glen. As long as there's correct infrastructure connections between those, we see this being kind of a scalable opportunity for us, and this would be just a start to get at least one on the ground. And think about it as a continuation of our existing e-bike program. So it would be a checkout system for people, but only those that are approved within the system. So essentially low-income folks would have more access to e-bikes in the area. It wouldn't be just for every Tom, Dick, and Harry to come out there and ride an e-bike. There'd be some strings you have to pull to become a part of the program. We're still working that out in the background, but excited about this opportunity because there's also no local match component. And it allows us to really get after some creative opportunities. Any questions about that? Sure, Pedro.
So the 125K, is it to share among TMOs, or it's the portion that Smart Commute is gonna hopefully get?
That's ours. Good question. Sorry, I didn't clarify that. That is ours. Each TMO is getting $125,000.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions on this?
I'm not seeing any.
Get some water
Oh,
here.
it's exciting.
Sure.
It's good to see this keep moving. A lot of good opportunity here.
Yeah.
Person, is this a part of that video that you guys did at all, or has that been included?
The bike rides. Yeah, so that was part of phase 1. We'll probably do some more for phase 2. Kind of to be decided at this point exactly what the work product looks like, but it's all going to be geared toward making a map this time as opposed to data analysis.
All right, let's move on.
Yep, last grant. I promise there's a lot out here, but I just wanted to bring this last one up. You'll notice there's no large approved across the back of it, just to fully distinguish the fact that this one has not been approved yet. So RTD partnership grant, we have 2 ideas here I've talked to you about in the past. Supporting the TDM set aside flex ride optimization program. Our idea here is to utilize RTD money to essentially pay the local match on our DRCOG grant application. It's an RTD run program for us to go after flex ride optimization. They have to be at the table, and this is a way for them to get some skin in the game with an existing grant opportunity, we think. We went through the sub-regional process with them, and our project was ranked number 2 out of 5, which means it essentially is above the cut line. So that's a good news for us. We think this has a really good chance of being funded fully, which means that the local match component would be taken care of almost 100% by RTD. There would still be a little bit of buy-in from the jurisdictions in the area, but fairly insignificant amount of funding from each one of those. So happy about where that is. The other one is support the TMO support grant e-mobility hubs, right? We're playing all of these pots of money off of each other to maximize the amount of impact. This is a much larger ask, roughly $145,000 from the pot of money from RTD, and it would basically help us construct more hubs, e-mobility hubs across the region. So we would be looking at not just one, but multiple hubs coming online within a couple of years across the region. So that was ranked number 3 out of 5, just right behind our other project. So we think that there's a decent possibility this also gets funded from our subregion, the Northeast area, RTD subregion. I won't bore you with how that process works, but we feel really good about the flex ride optimization get funding, okay about the e-mobility hub. It's right on that cut line. So we'll see how these land, but happy about all these opportunities and just really trying to take advantage of them. If we get all of these grants funded, our budget will essentially triple next year for the first time ever. And I'd like to say that my team has done a wonderful job just focusing in on these opportunities and not letting them slip by. So we've been able to really write these applications as best we can and try to take advantage of them and bring the funding back to the North area that to the people that we're trying to serve. So any questions or thoughts about this one before I move on?
I'm not seeing any. Great job, though. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I feel lucky to have the opportunity to have these grants to be able to go after so much more budget for the next couple of years. It's really nice. I mean, yeah, it's just really exciting to have it.
And you got a thumbs up from Pedro there.
Thanks, Pedro. I appreciate it.
All right, 144th.
Yeah, this is the meaty one, right? This is the big one. Our first big grant as an organization is starting to kind of wrap up. And I just am going to talk a little bit about a couple of things on 144th Flex Ride and the e-bike program and how they wrap up. It'll be relatively clean, but there'll be some time discrepancy between the two as we wrap these two up, we think. So I'll start with the easy one, 144th Flex Ride, which is the DRCOG TIP funded project that we've been running since the end of 2019. The program ends, as you all know, on September the 30th of this year. So in roughly a month, the program will wrap up. After the program wraps up, RTD will continue to run the service as it is today with two different schedules, morning and evening, to serve the kind of shift workers in the area with a flex component in the middle. That's not going to change. The stops will stay the same. We're hearing positive indications from RTD. The service will continue beyond the end of the year, although their service planners just can't tell me yes or no because they have not gone through the service planning process in order to make sure our metrics meet their requirements and their equity requirements and all those good things that the service planning folks at RTD go through every year, or 3 times a year, actually. So we feel good about it, but don't have a 100% yes beyond the end of the year. We've provided roughly 30,000 trips from the very beginning to almost the very end of the program. That's through the end of June. So we've had a little bit more since then. We're probably right around 30,000 total trips provided at this point. Our local match efforts, like I said in the treasurer's report, are still ongoing from outstanding partners. St. Anthony North, I've told you before, has been a bit of a challenge given some budget constraints from their end, but I'm working with Nicole Milo and some other folks to try to help pull some strings there and see if we can't squeeze at least a couple of dollars out of St. Anthony North for a local area contribution, since the bus stops there roughly 30 times a day when it's in service 7 days a week. So hopeful for that. Orchard Town Center has come back to the table and is interested in meeting with us for the first time since 2019. I don't know what that will look like in terms of funding, but I'll stay hopeful at this point. Denver Premium Outlets has agreed. Let Kyle back in here. Denver Premium Outlets has agreed to fund us with some special district funding. So the check is in the mail at this point. I'm just had to go through the corporate process to get that verified as an invoice. And then Amazon Den 3, I'm working with their kind of Mountain West regional economic development person to put some pressure on the Den 3 team to make sure that they're able to pay us that roughly $6,000 in local match. Assuming I'm able to get all of these, not Orchard Town Center, we'll be right on track with what we owe RTD. There'll be some discrepancy here and there, and we can make some service adjustments to make sure we're even. But for a large grant like that, we feel good about where we are in terms of local match. At the bottom, I'm sure you all have been looking at this, but roughly 52,000 passengers have been served since the very beginning of the program until the end of June of 2023. You'll see we rose heavily during COVID, right? We were the only flex ride in the area to rise because of the essential workers that we were serving at basically Amazon and St. Anthony North. We kind of flattened back out across 2021 and have stayed relatively flat the whole time. It's been a really healthy number of riders that kind of take the bus. You'll see that the number of passengers is roughly double that of the number of trips provided. So one passenger takes 2 trips usually back and forth. So that's why those 2 numbers are different on the slide. We feel really happy with how level this number has been throughout the time. We always see some dips toward the winter and it's a little higher in the summer.
It'd be interesting to see if it goes up at all with a lot of businesses now requiring back in person.
It will, and you know, honestly, some of these dips that you're seeing here, and you're going to see it. I think you're going to see a dip beyond this when I bring back another report at the end of the program. The real end is because we've opened up other flex rides to service this area. So we've worked with Thornton to make sure the Thornton flex ride services this area. We've worked with the North Broomfield flex ride, the brand new service I'll talk about here in a second that we worked so hard to get started up in Northern Broomfield, also services DIN 3, and they're dropping off a lot of people there too. So we realize that we're kind of cannibalizing our own service, but we're more interested in getting people the transit service they need from where they live, as opposed to them having to transfer multiple times just to get to work. We'd rather see them have to take a 1-seat or maybe a 2-seat ride, as opposed to just trying to force everybody on our 144th flex ride.
It's a good conversation with the ETRP stuff too.
It is. Yeah, if there's no way to get to work, then how are you going to do anything other than drive, right? It's bad. It's bad economics. Doesn't work. This next slide, which I showed you just for a second there, I just want to bring this up. This has helped us immensely. So we actually have, Gene has worked hard with our RTD service planners to, this Circle K that's pointed out here off of 136th is just to the east of the big King Supers on 136th, kind of just west of I-25. That is our Broomfield transfer point. I only bring this up because we're getting a lot of ridership that's kind of being dropped off at that Broomfield transfer point. It's a decent number of people. I know it seems small on the screen when you see 72, 59, but that's a decent chunk of our ridership that's connecting there to the Broomfield Flex Ride. And that's only going up and up and up because people want to get back toward Broomfield, back that we need that east-west connection. It's proving to RTD we need a stronger east-west connection to get people from wherever they're coming from in our service area back over to the west toward Broomfield. That's pretty much, go back here for a second. That's pretty much it on where we are with the 144th Flex Ride. We feel really strong about our local match numbers. We feel really strong about the ridership numbers. Happy to see RTD is going to continue it. We're going to have reports for that coming out by the end of the year. We really want to take our time and make sure we do a really nice white paper report, because we think, at least I think, there's an opportunity for this to be showcased at different conferences around the country that we have access to. And we could be a thought leader in kind of suburban micromobility in partnership with a transit agency. For it's not totally 110% unique, but it is pretty darn unique in terms of how we've done the service delivery across the pilot program. So we'll have that report done by the end of the year, and we'll submit it to DRCOG and RTD respectively, as well as you guys. Any questions on 144th before I flip over to the e-bike portion of the program?
Carson, I think just one quick question from me, and I don't know how much out of left field this necessarily is, but I was looking at sort of the boundaries of the Broomfield Flex Ride the other day, and it looks like, you know, it is very specific just to the jurisdiction of Broomfield, like the actual city and county of Broomfield. The sort of larger region there in that North Metro area has patches of Westminster and sort of Broomfield is kind of mishmashed with each other, but looking at sort of a larger, I don't know, North Metro, Adams County sort of tie-in, are there plans to bring in maybe that portion of Westminster into that Flex Ride? I know it overlaps a little bit of the 144th Flex Ride, but sort of as some potential users that just happen to be in that part of Westminster, they can't use it because it's technically in Broomfield. I don't know. It's just interesting. Maybe it's not. Maybe I don't know how the interplay is between the two jurisdictions.
Well, I mean, Waddy can add anything if he wants to here, but I think it's not out of left field at all. That thought that you just had is exactly the thought that our team had when we wrote the TDM set aside application for the FlexRide optimization program. The FlexRide polygon service areas are seemingly politically driven, right, by either political boundaries or we need it to service our area only, or we need to service this one specific hospital, or whatever it might be. And sometimes that works, but a lot of times it doesn't. And it needs to be service driven. So I think we've proven that on 144th, that you have to connect to either employment or activity centers in order for it to work. And you have to pull from the right group of people, right? That one little cutout of Westminster would be a good example of an area that you could pull from to make sure the Flex Ride is successful. They're struggling with ridership on that Flex Ride because, well, maybe they don't have the right activity centers, employment centers, or the right people to pull from that would actually use the service. So that's the whole idea of running our Flex Ride optimization program whenever we get our notice to proceed.
Gotcha. No, it's good that it gets off the ground and running, right? That's the most important thing. So it'll be interesting to see how it sort of evolves over time.
Yep.
So thank you.
Thanks, Carson. Just one little thing to add to that. We do have an incoming transportation and mobility planner that's joining our team here soon to replace Deborah. So we'll definitely have those conversations here soon. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, excited about that opportunity and think it'll be a good fit. So we'll look forward to having those conversations across the North Metro, right? If RTD is going to cut service and not bring fixed route back, we think Flex Ride's a good supplement, especially if it services the right areas. So let's have RTD pay their way to make sure they're servicing our communities, because I think we've all paid quite enough in terms of sales tax. All right, I'm going to move us into the last piece of this. It has taken up some time, but I appreciate the discussion. So there's a lot going on the slide. Let me just explain it really fast. This is some of our e-bike program data up to last night when I pulled some of these graphs for a long period of time. So we've actually, I guess it was actually only the last month, some of these numbers, but they're pretty healthy. E-bike specific trip count by purpose. So what this means is the number of people that are kind of labeling their trips over the last month or so. 153 of those trips were at work, 167 were home, either people going to work or from home. That makes up a little over half of the total trips. That's what we want to see in terms of our e-bike program. We have a use case across the entire program to show that people are using it for this case, but there's also this important component to see that people aren't using it for that case, right? They're using it for recreation, they're using it for entertainment or social, going out to dinner with friends. They're going kind of shopping. We've seen them go to Orchard Town Center and the premium outlets a number of times, and or to the grocery store. A lot of people actually use the bikes as grocery store getters. And then there's some people that go and get their kids from school. There's some people that use it for a number of things. And that this has allowed us to prove the case that while we want the e-bikes to be used for to and from employment, that's primary TDM, we also want them to use it for other uses. So this is a nice show cause to have some data that proves that they are viable options for people. And I think I hate to sit here and preach about this when Nathan in the room has done this for a long time, but it's nice to have some data to back up the fact that e-bikes can be useful for a number of reasons, especially for low-income folks. This is the number of total commute trips, right? We asked them to label not only their e-bike trips, but all of their trips. So we had roughly half the trips that people were taking the last month be e-bike trips, but sometimes they need to drive. So roughly a quarter of the time they were driving. Sometimes this other is typically carpool. A lot of them carpool to or from work if it's really hot or they need to get their kids to school or something. A lot of people in this demographic carpool. And then sometimes they just had to take an Uber or Lyft because they couldn't use their bike and they couldn't use their car because it was broken or for some other reason. So some interesting data points there. And then here's a kind of time series from back in April about people how far people are biking every day on the e-bikes. The reason I show this is only to point out one thing. This top of this graph on the y-axis is 10 miles per day. That is the sweet spot for us. We want to keep people under that 10-mile range to and from work, because if you get over that number, it becomes more challenging. Now, this does not include grabbing the bike, putting it on a bus or a train. It just includes the actual bike riding portion of it. But if you get over that 10-mile bike ride per day, it's just not viable for most people. So that's some nice data about our e-bike program. Let me bring us back to center here a little bit about what the program wrap up looks like. So it's supposed to end on roughly September 30th of 2023. We have 25 e-bikes deployed right now. We need 10 more to be deployed before the end of the program. If you're doing the math in your head, that's a lot in a small amount of time. We've had an interesting conversation, and I'd love some feedback from you all here today about this. We struggled for a long time in phase one, getting people to label their trips, spitting out the data that I just showed you. That is an essential part of this program. If people don't label their trips and we don't get that data back, the program is really hard to prove anything out of a pilot. So in phase two, we decided to set data collection minimums. 75% of your trips had to be labeled in order for you to keep your e-bike during that 90-day loan period. And we were strict about it. We actually pulled a number of e-bikes back or didn't give them out if people were not labeling trips correctly. Like we wanted to set the minimum and make sure we understood how much of a barrier that might be. So we still have 10 e-bikes yet to be deployed. And we're going to fight with this data collection minimum from here until the end of the program. Where I'd love some feedback from you all is to understand if you would like to see us kind of eliminate this data collection minimum and try to get those e-bikes out on the street as best we can, obviously according to guidelines of the program with low income and within 10 miles, all the normal factors, or if we should stay strict on those, or maybe lower the minimum a little bit and try to get as many bikes out as we possibly can before the end of the program and leave some on the table. A bit of a strategic decision that we've been wrestling with here at Smart Commute for the last couple of weeks. So we'd love some discussion about where the board might like to see us head.
I mean, I don't think we should really take away that data collection because it's going to help us moving forward, but 10 bikes is almost half of the entire bikes deployed. So I don't know. Nathan, you're an e-bike rider. What do you think? How hard is it for people to submit this information?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the data, and it is a tricky question, right? Because 7 or 9 bikes does not necessarily seem statistically significant, right? To sort of necessarily draw from that. But the data seems fairly detailed and important. It's tricky. I mean, I don't even know if 10 more bikes would be statistically significant either necessarily, right? Sort of demonstrative of the entire area. Yeah, that's tricky. I don't know. It's something I need to think about.
I think this is demand driven, right? I mean, do you believe that there's enough demand for adding 10 more bikes to the program, or you think?
Yeah, good question. Yes, I could deploy, Gene and I could deploy 10 more bikes tomorrow. The demand is there. People are on the wait list. The problem is if they're not willing to label their trips, then we're not getting the data back. That's the only buy-in they have from this program. We've covered the initial buy cost through some CC4CA funding, the $200 buy-in cost to be a part of the program. So this is really the only thing they're giving back to us being a part of the program. That's where we struggle. I also see Kyle came off camera. I didn't want to cut you off.
Hey, Carson, I guess my question is, we're saying that the data is very important. To what actions are we going to make as a result of the data? In other words, if we didn't have it, what would change?
Yeah, really great question. So it's all leading into this NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory system of data. They're the ones that run the application. And I don't think there would be any negative repercussions in terms of us not getting funding in the future or having any downsides in terms of blowback for our organization. I think the data would just be not quite as statistically significant from an individual program perspective, right? If we're missing the data for 7 of the 25 e-bikes or 7 of the 35 e-bikes, that becomes hard to prove a point on a small scale in a suburban setting. So that's what we would lose, is that potential small scale statistical significance within our own program, I think.
Let me ask this. Is there a way, without violating many privacy laws, where we can have some type of a tracker deployed, and maybe this is already the case, in the bike, so that we may not know what the intent of the trip was, but at least we know that the trip was made. We know the distance. We get a lot of the information, maybe just not, oh, is this for work or is this for pleasure? Could that get us maybe 2/3 of the way there?
Yeah, it's a really question I've had many times, right? And I think Danielle, who's on the call here for the first time today, and I were talking about this yesterday. We would love that opportunity. It's not a part of the scope, and we would just put air tags on people's bikes if they're willing to do it. I think it's something we could explore on our own, but it's a little frowned upon in terms of NREL data.
Because
privacy.
Why
Yeah,
is it?
I don't know, to be honest with
Sorry,
you. Their application's hard to deal with. Go ahead, Wadi.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I've had a couple of experiences collecting data, and when the user is entering the data, and I sometimes wonder, how reliable that data is. I was wondering the same thing, if there was any way to get the data directly from the device, and so I think that question was already answered. But at the end of the day, I think we're gonna have to answer the question of is that data more important than actually deploying those devices. I feel that having the devices out there when there is a demand should be more important than collecting the data. But if that's not the case, I guess we'll let them sit there. Seems like there is a demand, if it's part of the mission. I think we should get the devices out there and maybe work on helping the users do better in providing that data. But I think at the end of the day, even when we get the data, I wonder how reliable that data is, because I have experiences with that kind of work when a lot of times that data, it's not even reliable when it's voluntary and we wouldn't have any way to verify it, quite frankly. Those are my 2 cents.
And I see Sarah's hand up as well.
I had a question. How are we asking folks to enter their data? And have we also done any sort of surveying on what barriers to entering the data might be?
Oh gosh, I could be here for another hour talking about barriers, Sarah. It's a really good question. So the NREL application that we're forced to use for this program is not intuitive. The UI is pretty rough. The way the application works is you have it on your phone all the time, and it can track your location, and it actually auto detects the trips after a period of time. Just like Google Maps would know where your work and your home was after
Sure.
a certain period of time, it uses the same technology to do that. And then it asks you at the end of the day, it prompts you, and if there are trips that it either asks you to confirm, yes, I was commuting, I was going to work or home, or it asks, I don't know what this trip was. What were you doing? Were you going to King Soopers? What was going on here? So the barriers are, it's not intuitive, and it can be challenging for these people that have complicated lives to take the time to do this every day. And then entering the data is twofold, either automatic, or if the program doesn't know, they do it themselves.
Okay. I have 2 follow-up questions with that. One is, do people get any sort of crash course prior to on how to use the program? And then would it be worth it to have them track whatever is convenient for them, maybe on a spreadsheet, and then transfer that data internally?
Yeah, good question. The first one, yes, Gene on our team actually goes and sits down with people in person and has them download the app and walks them through the whole process, because it is a bit of a barrier. So I feel confident in saying that, yes, we do a whole crash course. The second point is an interesting one, in collecting data on their own. And I'm not sure I think we've thought about it, but we haven't fully explored it, just based on staff capacity. So maybe something to think about. Thanks for the ideas and thoughts.
Thanks for the answers.
I'm not really sure you have any new direction, Carson.
Oh, I just offer up, I think what Wadi mentioned is right. You have to question whether the data is actually accurate. If there's no way to determine that, you have to question that to begin with. I mean, I would advocate, I don't know why NREL would be opposed to having something that auto tracks without the incumbent inconvenience to the users. And I would also agree with Wadi in the choice between getting data that is self-reported and just deploying the bikes. I would probably lean toward the deployment of the bikes as more important.
Yeah, I was gonna, I think, add on to what Kyle mentioned, is sort of just a bigger picture, right? Like, sure, there's this grant, sure, it's the NREL guardrails. What's the larger, bigger policy picture? And I think the timing is a little tricky, because the state's e-bike rebate program is either about to launch or has just launched. And so there could be a whole new world of e-bike users that get a significant rebate outside of this grant, right? Both low income, moderate income, high income. And what are we doing with that? Is that our purview? Is that the role, right? So there's the grant, and there's these guardrails of the grant, and there's our purview of the grant. Big picture, e-bikes could be fundamentally, transforming in the region with this new rebate program that's about to kick off, and whether it becomes successful. So how do we fold into that as well? Not the answer you're looking for your question, but I think
this is really helpful.
Big picture is important.
Yeah, I think this is very helpful. Thanks for the feedback and direction. I think I feel confident in saying that what I was thinking in the background before this conversation was, let's maybe lower the data minimum cap, not be so strict about it, and just really encourage people as much as we possibly can, and make sure we get as many of those 10 e-bikes out there as is feasible before the end of the program, because I think it's more important to give people the options than it is to get maybe halfway crummy data, because NREL's breathing down our necks about it. So I feel pretty confident in saying that's the direction we'll probably try to take. I know it's 9, so if people have to hop off, that's great. I only have 2 additional points, Chair, if that's okay.
Sure.
One, Nathan just mentioned the e-bike rebate program. It just wrapped up, I think yesterday, the first round from the state. Our team has been taking, I'll skip that one, has been taking a lot of calls from people that are very confused about the e-bike rebate program from the state. They've bought e-bikes and are wondering where the rebate is. A lot of the jurisdictions in our service area are sending calls to us, which is great, but has been challenging to field. So we're pushing on the Colorado Energy Office to do a much better job in communicating what the requirements are for the lottery rebate. They have 8,000 applicants. They'll choose 2,000. I think they chose them yesterday. I don't know who won or who lost, but that was just the first round, and they're going to do it every mid-month until the end of the program. But we are pushing pretty hard, a few of us, to make sure that they have actual marketing information out there that we can share with all of our constituents, because I don't want somebody going out there and, like this guy did, and buying $7,000 e-bikes and then thinking he's going to get a rebate, no problem, because the bike shop told him he was going to get a rebate, and then we're caught in the fire. So that's my follow-up on the e-bike state program. And then lastly, office space discussions. I put this down at the bottom here. We're still in conversations with AC Rep has brought us to the table to have a conversation with Community Reach Center. And I think it's in a month or so. They had to push the meeting back about a potential idea of an office space sharing situation, but I'm starting to feel the need to look more seriously for a part-time office space for us that would be free and or very cheap because we need an in-kind space. Just the way our budget works, we don't have the ability to pay for office space through our grants because of the way that they're set up. So if any of you have ideas about office space, thoughts about office space in the North area that are in kind, I would welcome those discussions. We would only use it probably 2-3 days a week. We would never go back to full in time, in my opinion, but a place to meet, a place to have discussions, and a quiet place to work, and a place to store all of our event stuff as well would be really helpful to get us out of the storage unit that we pay $89 a month for. So that's the last thing I have. Thanks for sticking with us a couple minutes over time today. I thought we'd wrap up, but I appreciate the discussion.
Any last minute questions or comments before we take off for the day?
No. Carson, I'd offer you up my garage, but I don't know if my other family would appreciate that. So
Well, it was in Karen's garage, then it was in my garage. Then I was like, I'm done with this. We're getting a storage unit, and now eventually we'll find the right office space. We think
Carson.
there's one out there. Yep, Sarah.
Let me talk to Lisa because I know that we often talk about we have far more space than we need. I'm in my office maybe 3 hours a week.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be in there that much. I appreciate that, Sarah. We'll see what it looks like, but sometimes like Catherine works on Fridays and she has literally 5 children in her home. So having a space for her to go work would be great. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just nice to have in-person meetings. So I appreciate any thoughts anybody has. We're flexible and open to thoughts.
Awesome. Thanks, Carson. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah, you too. All right,
All
thanks.
right.
Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.